Coming up on today's Locked On Bucks, the Milwaukee Bucks punch their ticket to the quarterfinals of the NBA Cup for the second consecutive year. Another special night from Giannis and a team that really feels like it's starting to come together. Frank and I dig into it after this on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined by Frank Madden. We thank you for making Locked On Bucks your first listen of the day. And also thank you for checking out the Locked On Bucks newsletter. That's right. Your favorite podcast now has their own newsletter. Sign up now for the daily Locked On Bucks newsletter, your one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered directly to your inbox. To sign up for free, head to lockedondaily.com. That is lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Bucks newsletter. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Frank, as I mentioned, the Bucks are headed to the quarterfinals with an impressive win over the Pistons. Giannis was spectacular. This was a team, too, that never let their foot off the gas. I think there was a lot of really nice components, another very hot shooting night. So where would you like to begin with this one?
Can we say 48 minutes? Maybe not. Maybe not exactly 48 minutes.
A decent chunk.
But I mean, in a weird way, the number that's oddly most encouraging, and there's many numbers, but we'll talk about here in a moment. But the number 0 for the number of minutes that Giannis played in the fourth quarter feels good in a weird way. We've enjoyed Giannis, watching him play minutes and dominate so much this season, but to see this team play at the level they were playing for 3 quarters, to the point that Giannis just didn't have to come back into the game in the fourth quarter. He, kind of puts together that incredible run in the third quarter, scoring 17 points, just, raining mid-range jumpers on the Pistons as the Bucks extended that lead to, comfortably 20 plus, and then they maintained it at the start of the fourth. And we're able to, let him kind of just enjoy the fun from the bench. And obviously not needing to, drain Dame's energies as well. And for both those guys, just to have just very effective, efficient, in rhythm nights, and to get the rest of this team shooting the lights out, which I don't know. I mean, at some point they're going to have a game where they don't shoot well. And, you could argue maybe they've been a little too dependent on the 3-point shooting of late. But last time I checked, the point of basketball is to make the ball go in the hoop, Justin. So I'm not going to sweat it too much. 7 wins in a row. Another perfect group play year in the NBA Cup. Darvin Ham and Taurean Prince still have no idea what losing in the NBA Cup feels like over these last 2 years. So, just a big win and an easy win, and on the first night of a back-to-back, that is, a very welcome kind of combination.
Taurean Prince, to a lesser extent, didn't play in the fourth quarter either, which that's a guy you figure you're probably going to have to lean on quite a bit in that game against the Atlanta Hawks with their personnel. So that was not on the level.
Revenge game. Revenge game for Taurean Prince against his old team.
He's got a few of those. I mean, Giannis, I think we've run out of all the adjectives to describe what he's doing this season. And I get, too, in listening to some of the chatter of some of the individual defensive metrics are not what they were when Giannis was Defensive Player of the Year and even a couple of years ago, fine. But it's much better than what we saw each of the last 2 years, and he's doing everything the team needs. I mean, to me, a couple of more encouraging things that we've seen recently, speaking to your point of 48 minutes, still not there, but we're getting at least close to 40 or a little shade over 40, is, when the win streak started, and really in November, the start of November, when the Bucks were winning early on, it was basically, well, you need Giannis to basically carry this team, and the defense has improved. Maybe somebody else will hit shots, but that's how they win, is Giannis goes superhuman. You're relying on that less and less now. Like you still need him to be very good, but you reference those shooting numbers. That's the most incredible part of it to me, is you look back at some of those performances during this win streak here. They're not taking a high volume of threes. There's only one game where they took a really obscene amount, the 56 attempts against the Raptors. They've consistently been in the high 30s for 3-point attempts, which I suppose if you just look at the math of it, gives you a little bit of a pause and saying, well, this is going to start to come down. But they have consistently been shooting about 45% really since the first week of November. And it hasn't been just one guy. I mean, Taurean Prince is shooting 57% on threes. AJ Green is in the top 10. Gary Trent Jr. is starting to hit them. Damian Lillard is starting to hit shots more consistently now too. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that leads you to believe, well, as you pointed out, another stretch is going to come like what we saw early in the season. But the hope is, well, this team has kind of found other ways to play and win, and their defense has been much more solid than when they weren't hitting threes earlier this season.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, at the end of the day, like, what matters is that the offensive consistency is there. What matters is that, when games get close, you feel like you have actions and guys that you can rely on to create good opportunities. And so, yeah, I mean, I think all we can do is just watch how this team performs, moving forward. And Atlanta obviously has been playing much better of late. I think they're an interesting test on Wednesday. And then you've got Boston, right? For the last time this season, you get one more crack at the Celtics to see how you measure up to them, right? We saw them obviously go into Boston and talk about a team that plays the math game and shoots tons of threes. Well, that's exactly what the Celtics do. And so I think that's going to be a good test. And, again, I think we're still in that phase of the year. I mean, you're now 11-9. I think we're still at the point where the job is still, I think the ship's been righted to a large extent, when you look at sort of the aggregate, especially over this month. Ironically, this month, I think started with those losses back to the Cavs, where you lost 2 games by a total of 3 points.
Yeah.
You lost that close game to the Celtics. But I give the Bucks a lot of credit because, they didn't let those games kind of deter them or send them into a deeper tailspin. They actually took silver linings, and they used those kind of as moral victories, which you hate to do, right? You want to be beyond moral victories, and hopefully the Bucks now can kind of be beyond moral victories. But that was part of, kind of turning things around a bit. And obviously the record has, improved quite quickly in the time in the months since then. So yeah, I mean, I think we'll have to see from an offensive identity perspective. I don't know that this team is by any means fully baked. And obviously the big open question is the guy that we haven't seen yet so far, right? I don't think we're expecting to see Chris Middleton suit up tomorrow against the Hawks. I thought if he was going to play this week, it was going to be more likely he might play in that game on the second of the back-to-back at home than in this game in Detroit. But we'll see. We keep hearing now he's played in some 5-on-5 scrimmaging and things like that. But I think for me, as long as you can score efficiently, again, it doesn't look like this team's going to be an absolute offensive juggernaut without Chris. But hey, let's ride the 3-point wave while we can. And I think you still look at a lot of the 3-point shooting. I mean, other than Taurean Prince, who's been on a just ridiculous heater all year, he must be like still in the mid-50s, high mid-50s now after that
57% after today.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of go up and down the list beyond him, and I don't know that anybody else pops out as being just like completely out of
sustainable. Yeah.
Yeah, completely out of whack. Dame will obviously be a bit higher, but Dame was, I think, 36% coming into today. Bobby's still low by his career standards. Gary Trent kind of just got back to where you expect him to be. It was good to see him shoot well tonight after a couple of iffy performances here over the past week after that kind of extended hot streak. Pat Connaughton obviously isn't playing, but he was shooting 29% from 3. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what's sustainable. Brooks worked his way back up, into the high 30s from 3-point range, which, early part of the season, I think his offensive struggles were a big part of the story. So I think the 3-point, are they too reliant on the 3-point shot? Again, I'm not going to worry about it. I think they have the weapons. especially starting with Damian Giannis. And then again, the big X factor offensively to me is Chris and what he can mean for you when he comes back. I'm going to say when he comes back, not if he comes back, Justin, but you know, kind of looking at my watch here a little bit here and wondering when that might happen. But as long as you keep winning games, you know, it feels like you're kind of able to bide your time a little bit more on that front as well.
Yeah, and you're at least, I mean, the good thing you mentioned, they have, I think we can say righted the ship, but you still have to keep your hands on the steering wheel and make sure it doesn't divert here. But the good thing is this was set up with a lot of pressure on Chris Middleton of, hey man, we need you to be the savior. So please come back here and fix everything, even though we know that you're not going to fix everything, but you're not walking into that scenario at least anymore. We mentioned Giannis and another game where we've continued to see flashes in the mid-range for him. I do want to get into a bit of that conversation and what this quarterfinals group looks like in the NBA Cup. We'll dig into that conversation coming up next here on Locked On Bucks. Well, you've heard us talk about Game Time before and the ease of using Game Time to find your picks for any of the events that you're looking for, not just sporting events. You can get your tickets for concert, comedy, theater, you name it. Use the Game Time app to get those tickets. And a couple of reasons why you want to use that app. It's the easiest out there on the market. You can see a panoramic view from your seat within the app before you buy those tickets. Toggle on the all-in pricing feature to see the total upfront cost with no surprise fees and sticker shock at checkout. And you get the lowest price guarantee where Game Time will credit you 110% off the difference if you find those seats cheaper elsewhere. Best of all, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA, to get $20 off your first purchase. What time is it? Game time. And this next segment of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by Prize Picks. It is the easiest way to get in on the action. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. They now offer Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. You can sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more for your lineups. If you think Steph Curry is going to make more than 5 3-pointers next week, or maybe Giannis will go for more than 30, it's been a good bet so far. Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money this basketball season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $50. Instant rewards after you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. So Giannis started tonight, 10 of 10 from the field. I think I can count on one hand. I know we've seen it before, but it has not been more than 3 times that Giannis has put a pump fake and got somebody to bite on a 3-pointer and leaned in for the 3. But Frank, I believe this is the first time in his career he's been awarded 3 free throws and made all 3 of them.
I was going to say, like, it's remarkable how conditioned defenders are to contest threes, even when it's, you know, Giannis, who obviously historically has not been a great 3-point shooter. So I, you know, people always say like, oh, like nobody contests it. It's like, actually, like lots of good players
Human
have
nature,
like, gotten caught. Yeah. And we've seen Giannis get fouled, you know, on 3-point attempts on more than one occasion. But certainly for him to do it right now when he's really not even attempting threes with any regularity, made it all the more amusing. And I think it was Isaiah Stewart, wasn't it, that fouled him, which, you know, of course, the two of them have, you know, a fair amount of history with the last outing, Giannis scoring 59, in part helped by the fact that Stewart's the only guy that can come close to defending him on the Pistons, and he got tossed for that dirty play, basically pulling Giannis down from behind. So, yeah, that was a fun one, and 8 out of 12 from the foul line. Of course, Justin, I will hope that those numbers kind of continue to creep upwards. But I will say this too. I mean, you and Camille were talking about sort of the MVP narrative and all that. Look, I don't have a whole lot of hope that Giannis is going to actually be able to win an MVP this season. It just seems like the bar for him is always just a bit higher than it is for anyone else to even get in the conversation. But I will say this. I mean, we talked about this last year. You do need like a narrative hook beyond look at this dude's basketball reference page, right? Which you would hope would be enough to at least like what did I see like NBA.com or one of these things like had Giannis like fourth, and it's just like coming to this weekend, it's just like, what does this dude need to do? I get it that the Bucks haven't been great, but like, Bucks I think now are gonna have, well, if Denver loses tonight, they're gonna have a better record than Denver, and Jokic is incredible, but I mean, it's one thing to put him behind Jokic, but to put him behind other guys, it's just annoying to me. But getting back to sort of the hook, I think it's really important that Giannis keeps making mid-rangers at a really high rate, because I do think it's actually a pretty important part of sort of this MVP narrative. And something I talked about last year was, people don't appreciate that he kind of just doubled down and was getting to the rim as much and better than ever last year, because people just are kind of like, well, that's just what he does, right? But if he added something to his game, right? If he had started shooting threes at a 37% clip, or now making mid-range jumpers and looking really confident doing it, I think that's actually, it shouldn't matter this much. Let me apply that caveat, like having sort of this hook about, well, he's like making mid-range jumpers this year. It's valuable. I think it is valuable, especially from a durability sort of perspective and giving him an out and things like that. And kind of if it can maintain through the playoffs, we saw him shoot at a much higher rate from the kind of the paint non-restricted area when they won the championship. But I do think it provides sort of this like, and I hate to like pander to this crowd, right? But the talking head crowd needs like something to say about Giannis, like why this is different. And again, he's averaging 32, 12 and almost 7. Like, that should be your, ticket to entry to a top 2 MVP conversation. But I do think, hey, the Bucks are actually like playing really well. They've shaken off, the disappointment of the early season. And let's not forget, I mean, most people did not have them as, a top 3, 4 seed, even for many people coming into this year. So if they can, I think that's the key is just winning games, and it's not going to be easy to crack the top 4 with the way Orlando has played. The Knicks, I think, will be reckoned with, but they're one game ahead of the Bucks now, or 1.5, something like that. So I think if you can get at least 4th, ideally 3rd, that would put you in a much better position. And if you're putting up monster numbers and you have this narrative around, like, look how he has improved and transformed his game, maybe not transformed his game, I think that's overstating it, but if you've added to your game, because we know that people, NBA, the bag culture people are obsessed with making mid-range jump shots. Like that's the ultimate, for some reason, that's a more important barometer of how much bag and skill you have, not being able to like dribble better than any 7-footer in the history of the sport and get to the
passing ability. It's
finish,
can you hit an elbow jumper?
Exactly. None of those things, right? It's can you just pull up, can you dribble and pull up from mid-range, right? Okay, well, he's doing that now too. So hopefully that can kind of help him. And it's just great to see him playing with confidence. It would be nice if that also translated to the free throw line a bit more, but I'm not going to get too wrapped up because obviously he's playing at a super high level. And it was funny seeing someone quoted his like November stats. I think it was actually our friend of the pod, Dan Schaefer. And, it was like he was averaging like 34 and 12 and 7 point something assists or something like that. And I looked at it and I was just like, The funny part is like those are basically just his season averages. It's like you don't even need to cherry pick his stats to make him look incredible. Just say his season long stat line. It's down to 32.7 after sitting out the fourth quarter tonight. But he's at 64% true shooting, and the playmaking, and as you've obviously also been pointing out, just some of the defensive impact stuff too has really kind of returned. So I think the only kind of thing I think you can knit if you're looking at it from like an MVP case to me right now is the on-off metrics, which we've talked about for Giannis, Dame, and the starters and stuff, is still weird and difficult to parse. Like it tonight helped for sure, but there hasn't been that very obvious. And this is always where Jokic benefits is like they're just like garbage without him, and then they're great with him, right? And so the swing stats, the on-off stats always look better. Normally they were great for Giannis too, but for some reason this year he's been kind of just barely positive and hasn't really swung things on off very much, which again, I would kind of attribute that to just honestly like random weirdness. And again, if you win games, that stuff I think takes care of itself. And obviously I think the chemistry between him and Dame and kind of just that group in general has looked better. And obviously, again, throw Chris Middleton in there to kind of bridge some of the minutes where, Giannis and Dame have to be split up. I think that obviously also really helps kind of taking some of the playmaking load off of Giannis.
Yeah. I mean, the ultimate caveat, and I think Camille and I tried to say this, but it is way too early do you think Giannis can win MVP? Like those types of discussions. But I still think you're not going to get it out if you finish lower than third. Like you have to prop the Bucks to third. And for whatever reason, Giannis can match Jokic in numbers, and you can point to a myriad of things like, well, it's the Western Conference, so that's why the records are identical and the Nuggets are actually better. But what you mentioned, to me, what stands out the most is transform, like you said, is maybe a bit too strong of a word. But, we saw Giannis's shot diet go through a bit of a cleanse last season, and it has been full on. It's like seeing Mike Budenholzer trimmed down on the sidelines with the Phoenix Suns. Like, wow, man, that's you now. He for so many years was around
Ozempic Giannis. Is this Ozempic Giannis from a shot type perspective?
He for so many years he was around 20% of his field goal attempts were threes. Last year it dropped down to 10%. We were like, okay, it's moving in the right direction. This year it's just over 3%. Like he knows what works. He's not messing around with those. He's getting to the rim with ease. The mid-range shots, especially those long mid-rangers by the free throw line, he's started to find a sweet spot with that. And, the offense is any way you can cherry pick the numbers. I still don't think it's good enough for where you hope to go. But they were, I want to say during the win streak, which is just, the unofficial win streak that Doc Rivers would point to. It's only 10 games we're looking at. Your offense is 6. Like that's closer to where you need to be. The defense is still in the top 10. I still feel like this needs to be 6th is probably as low as you want to sit there, but like a top 5 offense is where you really need to get. Maybe they can get there with Chris Middleton. But Giannis has been a huge part of that. And it's not just his efficiency. It's everything that opens up. And I think a big piece of the shooting that we've talked about, Torian Prince mentioned at Media Day, he went in and he watched all clips of catch and shoot threes. That's what Torian Prince has done this season. And that's what he's excelling at. Gary Trent Jr.'s starting to knock down shots too. Dame, we've talked about the gravity, even when he isn't making shots, what he creates. So I do have a lot of optimism that the offense is going to continue to move into the right spot. And I think a lot of that is what Giannis is doing and stuff that doesn't even translate into the numbers that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I think looking at the shot diet, he's basically doubled the number of mid-range jumpers he's taken this year from about like 7-8%, which is roughly ballpark of where these are long mid-rangers. Yeah. I'm looking at like Basketball Reference, so it like there's 10 to 16 and 16-3. 16-3 is basically where it's really jumped, and it's basically doubled to 16% of his total shots. And I think the concern you always have is as guys get older, it's like, oh well, they're settling for mid-range jumpers or so settling for floaters. They're not getting to the rim as much, right? Like that's kind of the typical thing that you see happen. Not with Giannis. So he has increased his diet of mid-rangers, but his share of shots at the rim this year is 57%, which is literally just like, 0.005% lower than the highest it's ever been in his career, which was in the 18-19 season, i.e. the first year of Bud.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, he is also taking, I think he's taking a career high in terms of total field goal attempts per game this year. Or if not, he's extremely close. So he's taking a ton of shots, and he's still manufacturing just an absolute ton of shots at the rim. Yeah, he's at 21 point. I mean, it's kind of amazing, right? We talk about a couple of years ago, 22, 23, when he took 20.3 shots per game. Like, it was like, oh my God, he was taking way too much, carrying kind of way too much of a load that season. That was when he averaged 31.1. This year, he's playing 3 more minutes per game. So that's obviously part of it, but it's up to almost 22 shots per game. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like he's jacking shots or just, having to kind of carry too much of the burden. And again, I think that's upside, because I think, is he going to average 33 points a game if Chris Middleton comes back and plays in, 50 of the last 70 games, knock on wood? Probably not, right? I think that'll probably go down a little bit, but no reason to think that the 64% true shooting can at least maintain, or like last year was 65%, So, so just an interesting dynamic of him embracing the mid-ranger, but doubling down on rim stuff as much as ever. And to put that in perspective, so in 21-22, he only took 41% of his shots at the rim. So, I mean, that's a huge swing to go from 41% at the rim in terms of the attempts, the percent of your shots, to 57% this year, right? He's getting older. He's not supposed to be able to get to the rim as well. Giannis just defying kind of all of our expectations and assumptions, as he always does. So, yeah, I mean, just mark this as another Giannis appreciation podcast. They should all be Giannis appreciation podcasts, probably. But it's just been pretty amazing to see him doing what he's been doing, and we shouldn't be surprised at this point. But it's just a testament to him. And again, it's like people talking like, oh, he like really worked on his game. Well, I think this is and to me, this is the result of years of decade of practice, right? It's not like he just decided to work on mid-range jump shots this summer, and that's why this has happened. I think it's a confluence of a bunch of things, including, yes, work this past summer and all that, confidence, whatever it is, like, let's just kind of bottle it and hope it continues.
Yeah. And I think the right mix around him, at least, certainly more so than since the championship year in terms of the roster makeup and how the pieces fit. That was one of the big discussions we had last year. Just, the team was kind of thrown together on the fly when you factor in when the Dame trade took place. You made other signings that didn't really make sense. If that was going to be the case, and you had a chance to not necessarily undo that, but go into this offseason knowing we have Giannis, we have Damian Lillard. We haven't seen him yet, but we have Chris Middleton. Like, we know this is what we have, so here's how we're going to build around that. And I think that's what you're starting to see with the way that they're playing on both ends of the floor, certainly during this win streak, but really especially since November 1st here. So the Bucks are advancing to the quarterfinals of the NBA Cup. We will take a quick look at the other teams that are out there and what the road in front of the Bucks is coming up next year on Locked On Bucks. This next segment of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by Chime. It is that time of year where we all start to really focus in on our finances, maybe spending more than we should during the holidays. Well, you can take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more now at chime.com/NBA. Chime helps with fee-free overdraft up to $200, as we mentioned. Your next deposit is applied to your balance. Get spotted on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. There are no monthly fees or maintenance fees and over 50,000 fee-free ATMs. To date, Chime has spotted members over $22 billion in transactions through SpotMe. Friends give friends a boost, and eligible members get complimentary boosts to temporarily increase a friend's SpotMe limit. Set up direct deposit in your Chime account after a qualifying direct deposit of $200 or more. Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. With an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Your next direct deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges overdraft fees for using SpotMe. So enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That is chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bank Corp Bank NA or Stride Bank NA, members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly fees. Fee apply at out-of-network ATMs and for OTC withdrawals. So I don't know how much you were following along to the NBA's live standings of the NBA Cup, Frank, but for a while there, not at all. Okay. What a story it would have been for the Orlando Magic to enter play today with the highest point differential of any team and not even qualify for the quarterfinals. It really looked like that's what we were headed towards, and I saw a lot of people freaking out of, oh man, are the Bucks going to end up playing the Boston Celtics? It was never going to be possible in these scenarios that took place. But you got the Bucks advancing for the second straight year. Same with the New York Knicks, and I believe the Phoenix Suns did in the Western Conference. So those are the only three teams that can say we advanced to the knockout round in each of the 2 years of NBA Cup here. You get the Orlando Magic, and we talked about the Atlanta Hawks being an interesting test for the Bucks on night 2 of a back-to-back, how their roster is constructed. The Magic, it's going to be interesting because it is a physical defensive team that is, I wouldn't say offensively inept, but struggles offensively without Paolo Banchero. I don't think he's going to be back next week for this game. But last year, these were the teams that it just felt like gave you a ton of problems because it was an offense-only Bucks team. And if this team came up with stops, started transition on you, you were basically toast. It doesn't feel that way, that the Bucks have started to carve out a bit of an identity. So I am very intrigued by this matchup with the Orlando Magic just to see, you know, the last time we saw them, that disastrous final game of the regular season last year, how much the Bucks have grown since then.
I feel like if I was going to compare it to a game that the Bucks have played this year, I think the Rockets game would be the one that would spring to mind, just because obviously the Rockets have a lot of kind of great athletes and different kind of versatile defensive pieces.
They score on transition.
Yeah, and certainly in the Rockets game that we saw, obviously Houston did not score effectively, right? They had issues scoring. And, you know, knock on wood, the Magic will also not run into a hot streak when the Bucks play them. But yeah, they've got, I think, just, you know, really kind of interesting combination of, you know, defensive guys kind of all over the floor. You know, Suggs, I'm going to assume Suggs will figure prominently in defending Dame. You know, I think it'll be interesting to see kind of what the Bucks do against Franz Wagner, just because I think his size and length and the kind of ground that he can cover is just hard to match up with. And, you know, I think especially when he and Banchero are out there together, you know, it's kind of pick your poison. And, you know, I think Franz historically has been the guy that you wouldn't put your better defender on. But certainly not sharing the spotlight with Paolo hasn't impacted him in a bad way at all, sort of over these past few weeks. You know, he's really kind of stepped up. And again, like, you know, I was looking at his numbers, I think yesterday, I think he's averaging like, you know, 23 on maybe like 58% true shooting or something like that. Like it was kind of like not as like monstrous as I was expecting. You know, I think there's obviously been a lot of hype. I think his 3-point shot has looked a lot better this year. But, you know, okay, he's a very good player. Knock on wood, he's not ascended into, you know, some sort of superstar type level. Certainly you still have Giannis, and Giannis is beyond anybody that they have. And it'll be interesting to see, I think, especially with their big combination. You know, it seems like Jonathan Isaac, you know, who I always think of, you talk about defense and among their big men, I thought we saw some nice battles between Isaac and Giannis over the past year or two. Last year, Isaac blocking Giannis a couple times, and Giannis coming back and dunking on Isaac. But then we've also seen Wendell Carter and Gogo Batadze, I think both playing a fair bit. So yeah, I think, you just hope that they don't have a great shooting night, and that their offense, you can kind of muck up their offense and not give them kind of easy stuff. And I think what we saw tonight by the Bucks, I was kind of surprised Bucks quote unquote only had 10 steals and forced 18 turnovers. It felt like, especially in those middle quarters when they were going on their run, like they just did an awesome job of kind of mucking up the game for Detroit and just making the Pistons get really sloppy and just, kind of not get comfortable at all. So, hey, hopefully you can do that to the Magic as well, because, that's kind of going to be their game plan against the Bucks. I think, we've seen that with a number of teams just trying to pressure Dame really high up on the floor and prevent him from kind of getting the Bucks into their offense. Hopefully Giannis is healthy and we don't see, part 2 of the end of the Heat game, right, where they were just running guys at Dame. But that's the advantage of having Giannis, is you can't just focus on taking Dame because you've got the NBA's leading scorer that you have to pay attention to as well. So yeah, it will be exciting. I think last year in the game the Bucks hosted, I think that was against the Knicks.
The Knicks,
they won in pretty convincing fashion. So they don't get to go to Vegas quite yet. They do have to win that game. And the downside of getting through the group stages is you generally have to play tougher teams here, and a couple of these games, if you win them, will count against, or if you win them, this obviously the next game will count regardless. But if you win that game, then the next game, I guess, also counts against the regular season standings, as we saw with the Pacers in Vegas last year. And I believe only the championship game does not count in the standings. So, but hey, if you keep winning, great. And I think Doc probably said it best, right? The NBA put a tournament in front of them, so they're going to try to win it, right? And I think that's the right mindset to have. I don't know. I know some people are really into the NBA Cup. Some people aren't at all. At the end of the day, the Bucks need to win games. These are also regular season games. So I did not invest in figuring out the tiebreaker scenarios. I knew the Bucks needed to win tonight, and if they didn't win, then I don't know, like it would get complicated. And part of me at that point wouldn't really care a whole lot. if they had to back their way into the NBA Cup, I'd be like, whatever. But hey, just keep winning, and I think everybody can kind of continue to feel good.
Yeah. So we know, I don't think they've released the schedules yet, but I believe it's either going to be Tuesday or Wednesday of next week in Milwaukee for the Bucks and the Magic. And then your second game is either going to be the Knicks or the Hawks. So the winners play each other, the losers play each other for that 82nd game. So we'll see from there. But we said, from here until almost mid-January, you only had 2 teams with a winning record on your schedule, in the Celtics and the Cavs. And now that's looking like it's going to be at least 4 that you've got. So a lot of tests coming up here for the Bucks, including later on tonight against the Atlanta Hawks, and of course at the end of the week in Boston against the Celtics. But one stop away from Las Vegas for the second straight year are the Milwaukee Bucks. That is going to do it for today's show.
Justin, we got to call this out. Brook Lopez, the what did I call it? Brookola low pitch, blind touch pass. If you guys didn't see it, I think I retweeted it.
Into the corner.
If you didn't watch the game, he had kind of a blind reverse tip pass to, was it Taurean Prince? I think it was Taurean Prince, maybe.
Yeah.
In the corner, for a 3-point shot. It was, the kind of shot that would make all the morning highlight shows if Nikola Jokic did it. I'm sure since Brook Lopez, no, it'll be just confined to our little corner of NBA fandom. Kind of an Andrew Bogut type thing too. Andrew Bogut did that a number of times when he was in Milwaukee as well. So shout out to Bogut because he was one of the great pre-Jokic passing big men. But that was generally awesome to see. And also shout out to Andre Jackson driving down the floor, acrobatic
left-handed finish. Yeah,
that was fun to see. And he hit a couple threes.
Hit a couple threes. I think it was 2 of 5.
Keep putting them up, Andre. That 3 ball is looking good, and we like it when you try to shoot layups. keep doing that stuff, and good things will happen. Well, I'm excited. very curious. I'm guessing he's going to be guarding Trae Young on Wednesday night. I'm very curious to see what that looks like. Yeah, just try to keep this streak on.
Yeah, we will see if they can extend it to 8 in a row later on tonight. But that'll do it for tonight's show. For Frank, I am Justin. We will talk to you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.